In this week's episode of SempreInter, we'll be discussing the win against Fiorentina and the win against Sampdoria. We'll be previewing the Cagliari match, this week's Moggi, Frog and Moratti, and much, much more. Everything here on Studio Inter, only on SempreInter.com.
Se ne va largo dal destro il tiro, la spinta corta, finito, e gol, 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 e gol. Attenzione, Ronaldo salta anche Marchegiani e mette dentro il 3-0. Andiamo, il principe entra in area, è solo, il tiro, e gol, e gol, e gol, e gol, e gol. Con Ronaldo a battere questo calcio di punizione molto lungo per Zamorano che gira bene al centro, attenzione, il destro, violentissimo, e lo spettacolare gol da parte di Zanetti. La prima squadra che vince qua è la nostra Inter, l'Inter vince, e dillo, campioni d'Europa, campioni d'Europa, campioni d'Europa, campioni d'Europa, campioni d'Europa, i più forti siamo noi. Nulla è impossibile per questa Inter, nulla è possibile.
Benvenuti, bentornati to another episode of Studio Inter. I'm your host Nima Ruzzari, wishing you all a happy week and a happy Wednesday or Thursday night, depending on where you are when you're listening to this, what day it is. Since last time we recorded, Inter have been going on a winning spree. But before we get to that, I'd like to welcome our SempreInter.com's own preview writer, Mr. Mohamed Nassa.
Hey, good evening, everyone, or good morning, whatever. Great to be back on.
Last week when we were on, you said you were fucking happy. Are you fucking happy or are you just happy?
I am fucking happy for sure.
Okay, good.
Yeah. We'll leave it at that for now.
Yes, mind your manners, because we have to mind our manners and our language, because we're joined by a lovely lady. She's one of the best sports writers, I think, out there who writes about Italian football in English. She's a regular writer for the Sportsman and Tifo Football. You can have heard her talk about Il Calcio on 5 Live Sport, Love Sport Radio, making her Studio Inter debut. Welcome, Miss Chloe Beresford.
Hi, thanks for having me on. It's great to be on.
Well, I think it's really nice to have you on. It's the first time you're coming on, and to be fair, I mean, it's not, we did bring, you're a Fiorentina fan, we might as well just out there on. I gotta say, it's really strong of you to come on an Interpod after that game, so kudos for that as well.
Well, I could have cried off, but no, I decided to brave it.
Well, you're a tough cookie, I can tell you, I can say that. Anyone who's ever met you knows that you're tough. Although, yeah. I'm a little bit disappointed that you left so early that night at the Football Blogging Award.
I know. But everybody was so drunk.
Indeed we were. And that's why I thought you'd tough it out. But I guess we'll leave that. We'll talk about that off air then. Right. Well, let's get into it. Fiorentina yesterday at the San Siro. Traditionally a place where Fiorentina have struggled, and a game that usually promises a lot of goals and it's a lot of open play. But that game was anything but open play. It was pretty evenly matched. I'm keen to hear what your thoughts are about the game as a whole. Okay.
I think it's important to realise. I think Inter and Fiorentina are two teams coming from very different places. Obviously, Inter have spent a lot of money in the transfer window. They're in the Champions League and they've got really big ambitions. Whereas Fiorentina, the summer before last, they went through a big rebuild and they've got the youngest team in Europe, and it's very much a process. And overall, I think Fiorentina did really well. They gave a good account of themselves. And it was a shame about the result, but a sort of taking a step back and looking past that, I think they can be proud of themselves, and certainly in the first 5-10 minutes they really were positive, which is something that Stefano Pioli really advocates, and attacking, and they, Inter were on the ropes for that very early period. But I think after that, their experience and quality just started to tell a little bit. And they started to get more of a hold on the game, but it was obviously frustrating for a Fiorentina fan like me, but it was a very entertaining game, I must say.
Mo, I'm going to hand you up to Mo. You have anything you want to ask Chloe?
Yeah, so Chloe, Fiorentina is one of those sides that generally, like the casual European football fan, has a pretty soft spot for ever since the Batistuta and Nintendo days, And you've gone through some pretty unlikable permutations over the last couple of years. I wasn't very fond of the Montella Fiorentina. For me, maybe because Stefano Pioli, for most Inter fans, still carries we have a bit of a soft spot in our hearts for.
Yeah.
How do you feel about this current project? Is this a likable Fiorentina for you? Is this, like when you compare it to Montella or Sosa's?
Yeah, I actually liked Fiorentina under Montella. I thought they were really sort of fun to watch. I hated Paulo Sousa. I just thought he was just the worst coach ever, and it wasn't fun to watch the team anymore. So, when the summer before last, they sold off a load of the popular players. And it was tough because the owners are notoriously penny pinchers. They don't like to invest in the team, and it wasn't like Borca going over to you guys, and it really wasn't popular. But then in came Pioli, and he'd played for the club before. He understood how the fans worked, and they, the sporting director Pantaleo Corvino sort of handpicked him for this very specific project, which was developing these younger and on cheaper wages players. The project in itself, whilst I don't really agree with doing things on the cheap the way the owners are doing, it has turned out to be a really interesting one, and it's created a real bond between the supporters and the team because they're eager to see these young players grow and do well and start to blossom.
If we, speaking of Pioli and that, you and I, if anyone who follows you and me on Twitter, Chloe, knows that you and I are we always talk about these amazing clothes and how damn good they look on Pioli as well.
It's so smart.
It's so smart. That tailor cut, purple vest he's got going. Oh my God, I'd kill for that. It looks so damn good. Yeah. Right, I wanted to ask you a little bit more about yesterday's game, because I know I've seen a lot of people talk about this. I'm not going to ask you about what you think if it was a penalty or not, because clearly you don't think it was a penalty. But I'm keen to hear what you think about the VAR, because since the start of this season, the way the VAR has been implemented, like it was yesterday, is not how it was implemented in the first few games. That's at least my interpretation. What about yours?
I actually quite like VAR. I think that since the World Cup, it has been a more streamlined process, and I think the long delays that we saw last year have been tidied up a lot. I think I saw Sampdoria Inter, and I actually wrote about it and said that the decisions that were made were correct, in my opinion, and it didn't affect the excitement of that last 15 minutes. I thought it was a real thrilling end to the game, I do think in general that we get more correct results from it. I know there've been some controversial incidents with Inter this season, but if we look at the whole, I do think that it is better in less calls that are wrong in general.
Well, that's a fair point, but I think the criticism, or at least what I've been critical towards, is the fact that against Sassuolo and Parma, the VAR was not even used. This new definition of clear and obvious error, the referees didn't know how to interpret that, and after having been criticized and, this having been rehashed over, then they went back to what they did last season, and they started doing that with the game against Inter Sampdoria, that round 5. I think a lot of the criticism from an Inter perspective has been that, well, why, the lack of consistency. Do you think that, what is your take on that?
Yeah, I think obviously there have been mistakes. and you're right in the fact that it's not quite consistent, but I do think that the referees probably need a little bit clearer guidance as to exactly how they're going about this. And if they have got that clear guidance, then they need to be applying it better. It needs to leave, like the decision for the goal against Sampdoria when it had crossed the byline, when he crossed the ball, that was clear, and that's what VAR should be for, that it's stopping something like that, where fans afterwards, put pictures up on Twitter of the ball across the line. That's what it's for. It's supposed to stop things like that. So there are problems, I admit.
Yeah.
I don't think any Interistas bones to pick with VAR. I mean, I think everyone in general, whenever you watch like a Champions League or a Premiership match now, you're like, it feels like it's a game being played in the Stone Age,
I agree.
Without VAR. But the problem wasn't the Sampdoria game. The problem is the Sampdoria game followed the Sassuolo game, and the Sassuolo game. I think that was the watershed moment for the reinterpretation of VAR this season. Was it Sassuolo or Parma?
Parma,
Parma
game.
Yeah, the Parma. The handle that was Gianluca Rocchi. He was the VAR in chief for that game, if I remember correctly. And I think the combination of Rocchi versus a clear penalty not being given for Inter that should have been spotted by VAR is what raised, got the Interisti up in arms, and I think since then the Sampdoria game has been, it left a bit of a bitter taste in Interisti's mouth, because it was 2 goals not given versus a penalty just in the last game that we had lost, not given either. But then come yesterday, and so I think if things go the same way all through the season as they have done in the Sampdoria game and yesterday's game, I'm okay with the VAR.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really interesting what you both raise. I think for me, the way the VAR was used yesterday between Inter and Fiorentina, and also Sampdoria and Inter, is exactly how I want the VAR to be used. My problem was what I was critical to was against Sassuolo and against Parma, which I think was a complete travesty. For me, the VAR used yesterday, it's one thing, if the referee goes out, has a look at it, and then based on his criteria decides that it's a penalty, we can disagree on that, on the face of the decision, that whether or not it's a penalty or not. Obviously you don't think it was a penalty, he thinks it does. That's fair enough. There's always going to be, there's always going to be that element of, how a person sees things and how they interpret it. And that you can both, you can argue it both ways. You see, I don't have a problem with that, with something like that, if it goes for or against my team. What I do have a problem with is when the VAR technology is used, but it's not allowed to be used because of some sort of stupid bureaucratic rule. That was my Rocky. Yeah, exactly. No, it's that's my criticism of it.
It's there to be used, and it must be used.
Exactly. Exactly. That's my point. I wanted to ask you also, before we let you go, yesterday, before the match, I was, as we always do, Ausilio always talks, or someone from the Inter hierarchy always talks before the games, and this is the first time I've ever seen anyone, since they started doing this, I've never seen them not talk about the game they're going to play or the situation at the club, but spend the entire interview love-bombing the opposition player, which is exactly what Piero Ausilio was doing about Federico Chiesa. What does that tell you? Is he a done deal to Inter? What was that all about?
I wouldn't have thought so, based on what I know of him from Fiorentina, and the sort of plan that his father has got in place for him. Obviously he's highly coveted. He's very talented for his age. He's still a lot more room for him to develop. He sometimes, as we saw last night, he makes the wrong decision and he's so very clearly talented, but he has got work to do. So I think from his father's point of view, the family are not from Florence, but ever since the end of Enrico Chiesa's playing days, they've based themselves in Florence. Federico's been there since he was 3. His brother is also in the youth academy. And I don't think that is an accident. I think his father has wanted him to grow and develop in Florence, and then after he's sort of blossomed into the player we know he can be, then maybe they might think about a move. But I don't think, the family is not short of money because his father was a professional footballer. And I think they're going to be very careful about waiting, because we've seen players leave before and then not get into their new teams, and then he wouldn't mature into the player that he should do. So I've heard his father say that he would like him to stay for at least another season after the end of this one. So I'm personally a little bit sceptical about any transfer moves sort of in the near future. But that doesn't stop teams like Inter sort of highly desiring him, and talking about him, because they want to say come to Inter, don't they? They want to try and persuade him to make that move and make it sooner rather than later.
Well, Ausilio not only wanted to persuade him, he was talking about that Chiesa comes from a good family and he's well mannered. And
he's buttering up the family as well.
It really was. It was a love bombing of the Chiesa clan, and one that I can understand. I mean, he was talking about how he comes from a good family. He's got a good. He's well mannered. He's been brought up the right way. And I was like, well, did we just, are we back in Victorian Britain now? Are you coming to, marry your daughter away, or what's going on? It was really weird. Right. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Chloe, again. And if people
no problem at all.
And if people want to find you, what's your Twitter handle?
It's at Chloe J Beresford on Twitter.
And I can really recommend following Chloe. She's got excellent taste in fashion, and almost as she's got excellent taste in in football. But no, just kidding. It was great having you on.
Thanks so very much.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Right. Before we leave the Fiorentina game, I wanted to ask you a little bit. I wanted to hear your thought about the penalty. Do you think it was a penalty?
Fuck yeah. I mean,
I love talking with you, Mo. You never hold back. Fuck yeah.
No, look, I mean, it's a soft penalty is a penalty. Like, you summed it up very, very well when you spoke to Chloe just now. You said, we can disagree about the ruling of the referee on the actual incident, but the incident is there for VAR and for everyone to see. It touched his outstretched arm in the penalty box. There's no doubting these facts. Now, whether or not the referee would give this, would intent play a role or not, potato, right?
Exactly. I agree 100%.
So maybe someone else would have let it go, but by rule of law, outstretched arm in unnatural position inside the penalty box, it hits and changes the direction of a ball that might have been going towards an Inter striker with a scoring opportunity. It's a penalty. You can't argue. Soft penalty, maybe, okay, but still a penalty. It's not. It wasn't a scandalous decision for sure.
No,
I mean, and again, let's not forget the D'Ambrosio incident was a penalty, as a even more clear-cut penalty. He got tripped up on both feet from behind, fell flat on his face, and that wasn't spotted by VAR either. So really, there was another penalty shot earlier in the match for Inter. So yeah, no, I don't think. I mean, I sympathize with Fiorentina fans in the sense that it is a soft penalty, but in the grand scheme of how the match went and how things were, very deserved lead coming out at least of the first half.
I think for me, I can see. As I said before, I just like the way the VAR was used. I like the fact that it was used the way it was used. I like the fact when the referee takes time out to really look at it. We may not agree with his assessment, but at least it's being used, and that's kind of what I want.
And the same goes for the Sampdoria game, even though the VAR was ultimately used against Inter's favor. But I much rather see VAR being used that way than the farce that it was the week before.
I mean, for me, when it comes to the Sampdoria game, I don't want to win that way. I mean, even though Asamoah's goal was beautiful, even though, and it was gorgeous, I don't want to win like that. To me, that's I don't want to win like that. That's just not how I want to win. I want to win fair and square. You've got the lines for a reason. I don't want it to be someone's incompetence. I don't want to win like that. I'm not a Juve fan. I don't want to win games that way. So for me, it's a clear cut thing. I like the way it was used. My problem, again, is the consistency comparing to the Parma game, especially with Di Marco. I mean, the blocking of Andanovic, so when he's offside, the handball on Di Marco, the penalty, and then, it was thousands of things. And then the Sassuolo game as well, when Asamoah was adjudged to have brought, and that penalty. I mean, no. I mean, to me, that's what I don't like about it. But the fact that when the VAR is used to make justice, I have absolutely no problems with it whatsoever. And I think most go for it.
Yeah. Okay, just in case you wanted to wrap up the Fiorentina game, I just wanted to make one quick note that I've been wanting to talk about. And that's the Keita Balde substitution. I mean, I don't know exactly what happened at the end of the game and Spalletti's anger with Keita, but that substitution, I was so happy to see, because Politano had come on for Candreva, hadn't he? And then, we saw Candreva's. He had a pretty decent first half, even though it wasn't fantastic, but he had a decent first half. Then he started, going down that black hole of incompetence that he goes in, and immediately Spalletti's no nonsense take him off, put Politano on. And then Vecino, who had also had a pretty decent first half, started, mispassing and his work rate. And you'd think, he takes Vecino off and puts Valero on, maybe substitutes Gagliardini on. And for the first time in a long time, I saw Spalletti take a really gutsy substitution that wasn't a man for man, and I was very, very happy. I was very happy the fact that, he has the confidence in the team, he has the solutions on the bench, and he has the faith of the players and faith in the players to be able to make such a substitution, put Raja a bit back behind, Keita occupies that space behind Icardi, throw Perisic onto the right. It was a really, really nice move. And I don't think I've seen Spalletti been able, let alone, attempt to use something like that in the last year and a half or so.
Shouldn't we a little bit talk about the Keita Balde incident? What happened there? You want to,
I have no idea. So Spalletti match apparently was berating Keita Balde somehow. For some reason, he was telling him, I don't know. I don't know what I mean. I don't know. I don't know what triggered off that incident. And then Keita got really upset, and apparently he was almost crying in tears, and D'Ambrosio had to go and console him. But what the trigger was, I don't know. If you know, let me know. Please, enlighten me.
No, I don't know what the trigger was, but I don't think anyone knows. But apparently it wasn't a big deal because he was consoled by his teammates and they sort of worked it out afterwards. Apparently there's no problem, there's no issue. Because apparently afterwards, I think Spalletti said something along the lines of let's go to the dressing room and fight in there, and then be friends or something like that. So I think it's I mean this is the kind of guy he is. He seems to be his leadership style seems to be very similar to that of one of the boys kind of thing. He's a very passionate and he's a very affectionate and passionate and fiery guy, which I think the players appreciate because it makes them feel like he's one of them and they're one of him. And I think that when you have that situation and that leadership style, you're always going to have some people, butting heads. But as long as they resolve it, I have no problems with that at all.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Speaking of, I just wanted to talk about Vecino a little bit because
me too.
God.
Yeah.
I mean, this guy, I am glad that in a way, I'm glad it happened the way it did against Fiorentina because I've been waiting for this ticking bomb to explode pretty much since the Tottenham game. When he is bad, I mean, people say that when Icardi is bad, he's awful. Oh my God, Vecino doesn't know what positioning is. He can't dribble. He can't shoot. He can't do anything. When he loses it, it's just, you're playing with one man, with one man less than the opposition. He was single-handedly, I'm saying, yeah, sure, Inter were not good at all. I mean, their aggressivity, their aggressive, their pressure, everything was gone. But Vecino left Brozovic hung out to dry, literally, for the first 25 minutes in the second half. And I was so relieved and that's why I was so annoyed a little bit with Spalletti, that he waited so long to take him out. And I'm glad that when he did take him out, he made such an offensive attacking, because I was expecting Gagliardini to come on, and instead he brings on Keita Balde, and that to me is a good signal, and that's again speaks to this guy's character, that he does not let anyone in the team not know what he thinks and wants. He is very clear. And when you have clarity from leadership, that's when a group works really well. And you can see that at this Inter. And I know that people are criticizing Spalletti. I mean, he's never won anything, this and that and the other. Personally, I think that's nonsense, because he's not there to win anything. He's there to get Inter to be a top team, a top 4 team, consistently over a period of time, and maybe, win a Coppa Italia or go through to the Champions League regularly. He's not supposed to win the Serie A this season, and anyone who expected that is just delusional and is fooling themselves or the Inter fan base, because that is just not logical to expect that. From a team that's in the past decade has finished 7th and 6th and 5th and 6th and 5th and 7th. I mean, that's just not, that's not a reasonable expectation. So for me, I'm really happy to see how Spalletti is really running this team, and the way he's really leading this team. And it's the first time since Mourinho. He gives me Mourinho vibes, his leadership, and the way he gets the players to unite behind him, even when they fight. It's like a family falling out. You know what I mean? And to me, that's the most positive aspect, I think, of his leadership.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more, and I particularly agree about Vecino. I think his style of play in itself does him a disservice, because even when he's doing very well, he's the kind of player where, by him working well, you don't really notice him. You only notice him when he kind of screws up. Because his job originally is basically to move the ball, to always be there for Brozovic, to be able to find the easy pass, Brozovic or anyone else on, that's his job. He's there for an easy outlet, and then move the ball forward or give it to Brozovic to move forward, So he plays a very different role to Gagliardini. But when he's bad, like you said, that's when you really notice him, you expect, if we're overloading the flanks, and Brozovic is standing, right outside the opposition's penalty box, and you want someone to continue inside in the box with Icardi, it's got to be him. And Gagliardini consistently does that. He does that run into the box to give us that extra man inside. But Vecino has always been lost. He's either playing the ball on the right with Candreva and D'Ambrosio, and you're like, what the hell are you doing there, man? Go give support inside the 18-yard box. Or he tries to carry the ball himself for 30 yards, and inevitably he loses the ball, mispasses it, or, So yeah, the first 20 minutes or so of the second half were abysmal from him. But the first half was decent, it was okay.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's, No, I agree with you. You really notice him when he's bad. He's one of those players that you really, really notice. And it can be so frustrating, too, because he was pissing everyone off at the San Siro, or the majority of the fans at the San Siro, who were just like, dude, wake up. But the thing about him is that I think, given the fact that he's a very mobile player in the sense that he moves and runs a lot, and he's good in the air, and when the fact that he runs from midfield into the box, that from deep, that makes him really difficult to stop and mark, and that's why he gets into these goal scoring situations, and that's something Inter have been lacking, and that's something I want to see him do more. And that's something that I think he needs to do more. But then again, you have to remember, that was his third game in less than a week. He was in the World Cup as well. He went to the quarterfinals with Uruguay, played all the matches. So this guy's pretty tired. And I think that's why also, we should cut him some slack and think that, maybe we should attribute a little bit of him losing his head to fatigue, as well. But I'm positive that there's no way he'll be playing against Cagliari, or starting at least. I think for me, that's Gagliardini has to play, because I want to see him next to Brozovic, who ever since the Tottenham game has been, oh my God, what is going on? I mean, the way he dictates the pace of a football match in that midfield, it's just delicious to watch. I mean, it's one gorgeous pass after another. And the way now, I mean, if he continues like this, then yeah, this is Thiago Motta's replacement. We finally have replaced Thiago Motta. And if he continues like this, he's going to be one of the best in the world in that position, because his pass completion rate is ridiculously. I mean, the number of passes he attempts and the amount of them he actually completes is like, I think the second person in that stat in the Serie A is 30% behind him. I mean, it's Brozovic in the top 10, and then there's someone else. And that's amazing, because there's no shortage of midfield talent in the Serie A this season. So no, I'm really impressed. And that's something, again, how many coaches have we not had who tried to figure the Brozovic, conundrum out?
Riddle. Yeah.
The riddle. Yeah, but Spalletti did it. And this guy is turning into one of the best in the world. And before we, speaking of that, and obviously for his performance in the Sampdoria game, SempreInter.com's readers voted him the man of the match against Sampdoria, a whopping 67% of the vote, and I think he deserved it. I think he was brilliant. Who do you think came second in that game by voters?
Against Sampdoria, I would say probably Asamoah.
You're absolutely right. 17.3% of the vote. And Milan Skriniar third with 4%. So those two were on their own. If we move to the Fiorentina game, we have 35.9% of the vote went to the winner, Danilo D'Ambrosio, who I think is well deserved. I also saw him as the man of the match. I think this was his best performance since in an Inter shirt ever. I think his first half was phenomenal, and he followed that up by being really, really good in the second half and scoring that winner as well. And if we can get a D'Ambrosio that plays at this high level, I've been very critical of him, but I'm the first one to say, like Brozovic, I'm glad to admit I'm wrong.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Who do you think came second in that vote against Fiorentina?
I would reckon either Brozovic or Icardi.
Well, you're absolutely right. It's Brozovic, 23.6%, and in third place, Mauro Icardi, 15.8%. And I just think it's so funny, regarding just briefly about Icardi, the way the way they try to create that, he's got a goal drought, and and the way he's too cool for school, the way he handles himself, isn't he? Like, he just doesn't let anything faze him. He just kept saying, I'm not worried about the goals, they'll come when they come. And then, he has a pretty crappy game, but he still scores one goal and gets one assist. So, I mean, it's just, this guy it just becomes a joke, doesn't it?
No, and I liked in the pre-match conference, they asked Spalletti about Icardi's goal drought, and he's like, what are you talking about? One goal drought? You just scored against Tottenham. And they go like, you just scored an amazing goal against Tottenham. It's like, no, but we mean in the Campionato, and he was like, what are you talking about? We just played in the Champions League and he scored an amazing goal. Like stop trying to manufacture these ridiculous narratives. The guy scored goal of the week in the most meaningful of manners, his first goal in the Champions League ever, finally, and still yet you try and fix on some fictitious negative. Get the fuck out of here,
Yeah. Couldn't agree more. Get the fuck out of here. I think that should be I think we will end that segment, with that, because I think that's very suitable, because it is just bullshit when they try to create a narrative. I mean, he scored the goal of the week according to UEFA in the Champions League, and they talk about a goal drought, but okay, fair enough. But he does look a little bit out of form. And I think a lot of the players, from the World Cup have looked a little bit out of form. And that's only natural, isn't it?
Which is what makes this whole run so impressive. I mean, we're so far away from being our best selves, and yet we're, by pure will and sheer determination and, team spirit, pulling out these ridiculous results against some of the toughest opposition. It's easy to get fired up against the Juve. It's easy to get fired up for the derby. It's easy to get fired up against Roma or Napoli. But to be able to find the spirit and the mental wherewithal at home against Fiorentina when you drop a shitty goal, so many times in the last 4, 5, 6 years, we've seen the heads go up and no solutions. But even in this poor condition where, Perisic is far from himself, you don't have Versalico playing, like you said, Icardi's out of form, Lautaro's injured. And Perisic is complete.
Yeah. I mean, that guy is so tired. I feel sorry for him. I'm thinking of starting a GoFundMe page, send Perisic on holiday. He looks so exhausted that, I mean,
you know how David Amoyal used to say last year, where Perisic goes, Inter goes. But that no longer is the case. We have the quality to have one of our most talented players, effective players, meaningful players, be completely out of form and condition. And yet these crazy results get, not only, it's not like we're trolling the other teams. We're deserving these results, So I couldn't be happier, like you said, So
I agree. And the thing is, I think the main reason for that, I think that's a really important point that you raised. I think that for me, the main reason for that is because Spalletti is finally a coach who gets players to raise themselves a level, like with Brozovic, like with D'Ambrosio. He gets players to raise their level and to raise themselves from the level they are to a higher level. And that's something that we have not seen at Inter since Mourinho, pretty much. And that's why we're able to pull out these results this year, and that's why we're able to win matches last year. And the fact that we have a player like Borja Valero on the bench to throw on, who just looks like he's dying to play, and with the amount of football that guy has in him, I mean, this is looking really, really good. I don't think, looking good as in a comfortable top 4, top 3 position. But not Scudetto or anything like that, because to me, it's Napoli. It's a Carletto Allegri showdown, for me, the Scudetto. Right. On Saturday, Inter play again, at home. This time, this opposition is not as sexy as Tottenham or Fiorentina. But it's still a game, and it's still 3 points, and it needs to be won, as Inter are at home on the night on Saturday against Cagliari in the Serie A at the San Siro, 8:30 Central European Time kickoff. And Cagliari are a tricky side, but there is a difference between playing Cagliari in Sardinia and playing Cagliari at home. Cagliari in Sardinia, I think, is a very difficult game that anyone can lose. Cagliari away or in your home, that's a completely different ball game, and that's a team that Inter should steamroll, in my opinion. What do you want to see against Cagliari?
Honestly, my hopes for steamrolling are put on standby for the time being. It'd be nice to steamroll them, in terms of a result. But what I'd like to see more of is, let's say, what we showed in the Parma game until Di Marco scored that goal, which is complete control and bossing of the pace and where and where the ball goes. Of course, effectiveness in the last third, the problem, the whole problem of the season so far has been the before final touch. That's always been, you get the ball to, whoever, to Perisic on the wing, to Kandreva, to Brozovic. They get to right before the penalty box to Nainggolan, and that last ball to Icardi or to whoever is making the run inside is always just missing that last bit of, I'm not going to say quality, it's missing that last bit of understanding. The guys don't know where to find each other just yet. So what I'd like to see is the same way we approach all these games, which is going out to win, controlling and dominating where and how and at what pace the play takes place, and hopefully with a more effective level of output in front of the opponent's goal. So, I mean, I don't want to be sitting down, biting my nails at the end of the first half, at 0-0 and hopefully waiting for that goal to come in the 70th minute, a goal in the first half and then a goal in the second. Even if we even if we don't come out with a clean sheet, a comfortable, easy 2-1 or 2-0 would be more than satisfactory for me.
For me, it's obviously the win is the most important thing, but I think what I want to start seeing now, and I'm really, this is starting to bug me now, is the fact that I've yet to see Inter play good over 90 minutes. It's been for 15 minutes in a second half, or it's been 20 minutes during a first half, or it's been a good full first half, but then it's followed up by a shitty second half. I want to see an Inter performance over 90 minutes. And I'm not talking about, and when I say performance, I don't mean dominate teams like you said. We put all that, steamrolling on hold. I want to see a controlled Inter performance. I think, what Kandreva said after the first half, we struggled to control these games. I agree with his analysis 100%. I want to see Inter control a game from start to finish. Against the Cagliari, that's what I want to see. I want them to start building this, security within themselves. That's what I want to see. I
think that's pretty much what I want to say. Not in so many words, but yeah, no, I think we're both talking about the same thing. Take ownership of the entire 90 minutes from the beginning to the end. As we did against Parma until that goal got scored. Without, the problem with Parma was we didn't actually score. But, without putting ourselves in that sort of trouble, but, managing the game, like you say, for 90 minutes, dominating and, leaving the field comfortable. Everyone gets up and claps. Thank you guys. Bravi ragazzi. Ciao, ciao,
Exactly. That's what I want to see. I want to see a controlled performance. The Pazza stuff, yeah, fair enough, but I want a controlled performance. No, but it's like, the Pazza stuff comes when you least expect it. You know what I mean? Like, that's part of this club's DNA. It's, yeah, exactly. No, but that stuff happens regardless, But what I want to see now is I want to see this project start to play and act like a big team, like they used to do under Spalletti last season. I want to see some stability, because then again on Wednesday we're playing PSV Eindhoven, and then it's Spal on the Sunday, and then it's the derby 14 days later. Yeah, it's 14 days later. So basically it's 3 days left until the international break, which I think Inter need, and I'm really looking forward to. I think Perisic is counting down the minutes. That guy is so exhausted. Oh my God, he looks so tired. And this is a guy that, this guy never gets tired, but when he looks tired, he looks fucking exhausted.
He looks like he's been on a three-day bender,
He really is. He looks like I do after one day nowadays, So,
old age.
Yeah, old age, man. No, but he looks really, really tired. I hope for his sake, we get through this period without any injuries, so that guy can, just take a few days off. Take one day off, go with his family, whatever. Spend some time with the family, just relax a little bit, because he needs to rest. So that's kind of what I want to see. But if we talk about predictions, for me, I think 2-0. I think Icardi has broken his spell, so I think he'll score 2 against Cagliari.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I think 2-0 is good. I think I'd like to see someone else score as well. So maybe I'll go for a cheeky 3-1 instead of a 2-0, just to say an Icardi brace. Because I agree, if Icardi scores 1, he'll score 2. And since I want to see someone else, preferably Perisic, just because we're talking about how tired the guy is. So let's give him a goal to lift up his spirits. So I think a brace by Icardi and a goal by Perisic. Vintage Inter Icardi Perisic, and maybe they'll score 1 on a fast break.
Cool. Right. Let's move on to the part of the show where we pay tribute, rip the piss out of, and criticize someone or something in the world of football heavily. Starting with positivity, which is the Moratti of the week, which will be presented by Mr. Mohamed Nassa.
Oh my God, he is beautiful! He is beautiful, yeah!
Yeah, my Moratti of the week is something that I spoke about earlier, and that is the Vecino Ketabalde substitution. For all the same reasons that we spoke about earlier. First of all, it's the fact that, I'll repeat myself, but quite briefly, the fact that Spalletti has the faith in the players, he's got the bench, and the players have faith in him, and the fact that, we're able to have the tactical fluidity and the manpower availability to be able to make such a substitution at that critical point in the game. We've harped on the matter so many times. Last year, the guy turns around and he has to throw fucking Eder on the pitch. So for me, that particular substitution summed up a lot of, it framed a lot of where we were last year and where we are this year and how far we've come, and just, I appreciate it. I appreciate everything about that move. So that's my Moratti for the week.
Nice one. Let's move on to something a little much more negative. This week's Moggi, which I'll be presenting myself. Unsurprisingly, this week's Moggi is awarded to the Lega Calcio for the asinine decision to give Luciano Spalletti a one-match ban, a one-match touchline ban for celebrating into the camera when Brozovic scored the last the winning goal against Sampdoria, which Inter had to appeal, and which, despite anyone with a pair of eyeballs and the actual video of the situation showing that he was not taunting the fourth official, he was actually celebrating a goal in the 93rd minute, which anyone involved in football, either directly or indirectly actually does. So despite that, they gave him a one-match touchline ban, which Inter appealed, won, well, duh, but he still had to pay 5,000 euros in fine for something he did not do, which is ridiculous. So for no more explanations than that, our dear friends at the Lega Calcio and the disciplinary committee get the Moggi of the week. Right.
Very well deserved.
Yes, they always deserve it. If anything, if history is anything to go by, it's because they've been dealing with Moggi too directly as well. But that's another show. That's another show. Right. Let's move on to the Frog of the Week, which Mo and I will be presenting one each, starting with Mo.
Yeah, my Frog of the Week has to be the whole FIFA awards thing. Like, I think awards in general are pretty stupid, just in the sense that, it feels like a really silly thing. Who's the best player in the world? Who does it? Ronaldo, Messi, So that whole narrative for a cynical old dog like me is pretty silly in and of itself. But then they don't do anything to help themselves or put up some semblance of legitimacy, do they? So I'm Mohamed Salah's biggest fanboy, and even I'm going to tell you that there's no way in hell like that goal deserves the best goal of the season award. especially in the season where you've gotten two amazing, backwards kicks from Cristiano and from Gareth Bale. Gareth Bale's even being more poetic because it was in the final. So that was silly. And then you get Salah, shortlisted in the top 3 players of the year behind Modric and Cristiano Ronaldo, but unusually doesn't get selected in the top 11. And the same goes for Courtois, who was nominated as the year's best goalkeeper, but isn't in the FIFA Pro, whatever. And De Gea, I guess, is not ahead of him. So, without going into too much details, I mean, it's how much more farcical can you be? Like trying to appease as many different sponsors and, apparel makers and clubs, and just get your garbage out of here. Like football doesn't need this crap.
I agree. For me, the frog of the week is this childish, infantile the war that is going on between Jose Mourinho and Paul Pogba right now, which is so ridiculous that I don't even know where to begin. Basically, Sorry?
Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. It's so childish. I don't even know where to begin. But basically, Mourinho made him the vice captain and then removed him without saying that nothing has happened. But now details are coming out. And according to the Daily Mail, and I'm just saying this is the Daily Mail, the reason for this is, Pogba played loud music on the upper floor of the double-decker that the team was on, and the Mourinho and his staff thought that he should have been quiet and focused on the games, and therefore Mourinho is unhappy that Pogba has had a private driver and a Rolls Royce pick him up at the airport without driving with the team. According to the Daily Mail, he was picked up from Berlin, was driven to the airport to join the French national team after United's win against Turf Moor, whilst the rest of the team went back on bus, and therefore Mourinho and him are basically at each other's throats and behaving like 2 6-year-olds. And this is so childish, so I think they're both behaving like 2 utter frogs. Right, that was all we had time with this week. I'd like to thank Chloe for coming on. Always a great pleasure to talk with her, and it was a great pleasure to have you on, Mo, as always.
Indeed, it is always a pleasure. Thanks, man.
And until next week, my name is Nima Ruzzari, wishing you all a pleasant week, 3 points, and sempre e solo Forza Inter.
Che solo